Okay, this video is intended to show you how to create a budget using Google Sheets. You could use Microsoft Excel, but I'm choosing to use Google Sheets. They're very close together, and the ideas and principles are pretty much the same, but it's a different system. So right off the bat, this thing is an example of a personal budget. I also use the same concept for work sometimes, depending on what I'm doing for work. But I mainly use this format for a personal budget. So the point of this is to figure out very important things in your life, whether that's how much money you need to take in order to cover all of your expenses. It might be useful for you to figure out how much money you can save if you need to save up for a trip or a big purchase that you might want to make, or if you have to move, or maybe even for some college expenses. And another thing that it is good for is helping you decide whether or not you can take on another expense. So for instance, I have a car payment here, and maybe I want to get a car. If I look at my payments and they're $200 a month, maybe it's not something I can afford right now based on how much money I'm making. So that's the whole point of this, is to figure out what big decisions that you can make in your life. And also just take some of that stress out and letting the computer do some of that heavy lifting for you so that you can kind of take the anxiety level down a little bit. All right, so this is where we were at in class. We didn't get to this complicated thing yet. We just got to here, which might still look complicated, but really we're just looking at these two columns right here. Everything else to the right of those two columns is really just dragging the information over and letting Google Sheets do the math for us. And that's why I do this in Google Sheets, because it saves us a lot of time. So you really only have to do things once or twice and then drag those things over. So I'm going to start with a blank sheet here. I'm going to call this video demo. All these little tabs down here, these are actually referred to as sheets. And then all of the sheets combined in this big file is called a workbook. So when I open up this file, the file is called demo tech drawing, demo budget. When I open up this, it's going to open up all of these sheets down here too, because it's going to open up the entire workbook. Okay. This blank screen, what this is a sheet filled with a bunch of cells. Each one of these little things here is called a cell, and inside of the cell is where you put your data, whether that's a word or whether that's a number. Information goes inside of those cells. So I'm going to start in cell A1, and we call this cell A1 because we refer to each cell by the column that it's in first, and then the row that it's in. So when I click on the column A, the whole column, vertical, gets highlighted. When I click on the row 1, the whole row, horizontal, gets highlighted. So this is cell A1. Inside of this cell, you can enter in your data, whether it's a word or a number, and then you can format this stuff by using this toolbar up here. You can also format things like the width of your columns by dragging them over like this, making sure you see that black arrow, or dragging up and down the height of your rows. But I'm going to undo those things so they're back to default. We'll get into that a little bit later. So entering in some information, I'm going to look at this this one as an example, and to save some time, what I'm going to do is copy some of the things that are not going to change. So that means all of this stuff right here and all this stuff right here, for our example, they're not going to change, and neither is the pay period at the top. So I'm just going to copy the pay period first. So I'm going to hit Control C, and I'm going to go back here and I'm going to copy this. And as I'm copying this, this is something that you would have to type in manually if you're doing it for the first time, but I'm just trying to save some time here. Okay, so you'll notice that this looks a lot different because, remember, the format hasn't been made yet on this new one. So formatting has to do with everything with color, bolding, italics, all that stuff is referred to as formatting. Everything else is just entering in data. Okay, so our data is entered, but now we need to format it. Okay, so I'm going to take the A column and then drag it over a little bit so that it matches up. Okay, and that already looks a lot better. I'm missing what's going on here in row 8, which is this black line or this gray line here. This is just a separator. I just do this visually so that I keep this stuff on the top separated from the stuff on the bottom. Everything below this gray line are our expenses. Those numbers change. That's depending on what we pay per month or per pay period. So I'm going to highlight all of the cells in a single row as far as our pay period goes, and I'm going to merge them. So that means I'm going to make them one cell. So up here on the toolbar, you're going to see a button called Merge. If you hover over anything here, it'll tell you what the name of it is. So I'm going to just click that button, and it's going to merge them all together. And I'm going to color it by clicking on this fill color. I'm going to make it black, which means if I type inside of it, I also need to change the color of the text because that's also black and you won't be able to see it. So I'm going to make that white, and I'll make it bold, and maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to double click in there, and I'm going to type in expenses listed below. I also made it all caps. I don't know why. I'm also going to center this, so I'm going to click on this button here, center it. Maybe I'll make it italics. Okay, so I'm just formatting things, just making it how I want it to look. To be honest, that's actually a little too dark, so I'm going to change that. So our stuff, our information is listed. We're going to start doing some numbers and some formulas. So we want to get to at least this point here. The main thing that we want to look at, the whole point of this is to really kind of look at this whole row right here that says leftover account balance. That's a good thing. That's money that after we pay all of our expenses, we have money left over. So the higher that number, the better. That's what we want. That means we can either save that money, or we can spend more money on rent, or spend more money on groceries, or more money on a cell phone, or whatever. But the higher this number, the better. So we want to kind of focus on that. So I'm going to make this back white again. And let's start plugging in some numbers. So let's go to our example here. Along this pay period, this is listed as 7/10. That's July 10th. This is every Friday in the summer of 2020. So this could be used if, again, as a student, if you got a summer job. This is actually, I believe, the second Friday of July, because usually you start a job, you get paid on the second Friday. So this is the second Friday, and then every date listed here is every Friday until we go back to school. So let's just say we worked, I'm going to make this number up because I'm not going to do the insane math right now, and I'm not exactly sure what it is off the top of my head, but I do know that minimum wage is $15 an hour. So if we do $15 an hour times a normal full-time work week, which is 40 hours, we're making about $600 in 1 week. But there's some taxes taken out of that, and I don't know, again, the exact math behind it, so I'm going to just guesstimate at $500 is what you'll be taking in. And let's say we started right in the beginning of the summer, and remember I said that 7/10 is actually the second Friday. So you usually, if you start a job brand new, you won't get paid the first week. You'll get paid the next week, and it should be both paychecks in one. So we're going to make this $1,000, but every other one will be $500. Okay, so I'm entering it in manually, but here's another trick you can do. You can click on this, and this little blue square, if you hover over it, you can click it and drag, and it'll copy everything over to wherever you drag it. Okay. The important thing to know is that it doesn't just drag the number, it drags the data that is inside of that cell. So in other words, if there's a formula inside of that cell, it's not going to copy the number, it's going to copy the formula, which is the data inside of that cell. Okay, so let's go to secondary income. That's like if you happen to do something random, or maybe you have a second job, I don't know. But I'm going to throw in $50 in random locations because maybe you babysit or something and you catch an extra $50 for the week, which is kind of neat. You would insert this like when you know you're going to do it. For this example, I'm just doing it random. Account balance. that is what you have in your pocket. Okay, so whether that's your literal bank account, if you have a bank account, then that's what's in your bank account. If you're getting paid in cash or you get paid a check and you just cash it, then that's just the money that you have in your pocket. Okay, so that is both of these numbers combined. Okay, so we're going to put a formula there. That's going to be our very first formula, and this is how you do formulas. You have one of two options. You can either go up here to the toolbar and click on this thing called functions. I always say formula, but it's really the correct word should be function. And we can click on the function that we want to put in that cell. So right now this cell is highlighted. If I click on a function, it's going to bring that function up, and then we can type things in and create our formula. Or what I usually just wind up doing is just typing it in manually, because we're only using one, maybe two, and they're really easy to remember. So we're going to add these two numbers up. So that's going to be the sum. Okay, the total of those two numbers is going to be our sum. So we're going to do equals. That's how you start creating a function in any cell. You always start with the equal sign. We're going to type in the word sum, and you'll notice a bunch of suggestions come up, but we just want the regular sum. I'm going to open parentheses, and that lets the computer know that I'm about to type in some data or type in or select cells. Okay, so we've got the formula teed up and ready to go. Now we're going to click on this cell, and I'm going to hold the control button and also click that cell. And then I'm going to close it, hit enter, and it just did the math for us. Okay. Another quick way you can do that is if you did equal sum open parentheses, I can click and drag and then let go. If I have a lot in a row, close the parentheses, hit enter, same thing. Okay. Total expenses I'll get to in a second, and this I'll get to, and that I'll get to, but let's move down here. So let's plug in some fake numbers here. Some of these, like the first three, you're only going to pay once a month. Okay, so that means we're not going to put this number in for every single paycheck. You don't pay rent every week. You pay rent once a month. So let's just say this is the beginning of the month and we paid a little bit late, so we're going to be paying our rent. Let's say we pay $300 a month in rent. I know it's really cheap, but maybe it's a situation where you're helping your family out a little bit for rent money per month, and you're contributing $300 a month. Okay. Your cell phone. Let's say you're not paying the full thing, but you're contributing, so you're paying $30 a month. Let's say you pay for your own Spotify. It's $10 a month. You get a haircut. Let's say that's $50. And personal, I always include, that's like spending money. That's money that I have in my pocket or my wallet, and I know that that's my money that I can do whatever I want with. But once it's gone, it's gone. So that means if I'm hanging out with my friends and we say, hey, let's go watch a movie, and you spend $20 at the movie theater, well, that's $20. Maybe you get some dinner afterwards and you spend it, and then if that money's gone, that's it. So that's, to me, that's me being able to manage my money. So I'm very careful about whatever I choose for this. So let's just say I give myself $60 a week. Okay, that's just like random spend what you want money. Okay. Or let's make it 70, okay? Because that's like $10 a day. And if you don't spend $10 that day, that means you have $20 the next day. The total is obviously going to be all of this stuff together. So I'm going to just drag this over, by the way, so that, nope, I don't want to do that actually. I just want to make the same color. So I'm going to make that the same color. I'm just doing some quick formatting. I'm going to make that the same color. And I'm actually going to make this a lighter green. Okay. So the total, just like this formula from before, equals sum, open parentheses. Click, drag, let go, close parentheses, hit enter. Total expenses is $460 for that week. Okay. Now let's pop back up to the top section. Total expenses here. It's the same thing. I just have it up there, and you'll see why in a second, because it makes visually doing all the math really easy. So I'm going to hit equals here. And this cell, I want to be the exact same amount as whatever's in this cell. Okay, remember we're only operating in column B right now. Okay, so whatever's in this cell, I want to equal right here. So I'm just going to open my parentheses, and I'm going to click that cell, close the parentheses, hit enter. Okay, so now that cell and that cell equal the same thing. So let's say I find out that my haircuts actually cost 60 bucks. It changes the number down here. It also changes it up there. Now our leftover account balance, remember before I said this is the thing to really pay attention to. This is how much money you have left over after all of your expenses have been paid and taken care of. This is what you want to know and hold on to. So we're going to do a little formula. That's going to be whatever our account balance is minus our expenses. So now you might know why I put the expenses up here too. Okay. So leftover account balance equals sum, open parentheses. We're going to do this number minus, I'm going to click on this cell, close my parentheses, hit enter. I've got a total of $580 left over. Not bad. Okay. Now, one thing that I want to do really quick is this is not representative of money just yet. These are just numbers. So I want to turn it into currency. So I'm going to select all of this stuff. Notice I'm leaving pay period, this row, out of it, because those would turn into dollar signs in a second if I included it. So I'm going to select all this stuff, go to format, go to number, go to currency. Okay, now everything's got a dollar sign and a decimal. So if there's any change in there, you can throw that in too. All right, now one more row right here, or sorry, one more column, column C. When we're done with column C, that's it. We can just drag this stuff over and we can really plan 6 weeks down the road. We can do this as far as we want. We can plan as long as our expenses stay the same and our income stays the same. We can plan 10 years down the road. More than likely, things will change at the end of a single year, but you'll see. So we're going to leave this blank. Our account balance, remember, is going to be this plus this. But remember, your account balance is what you have in your pocket or in your account. And it's not only what you just got paid on the 17th, it's also what you have left over from last week. So our account balance is actually going to equal sum. I'm going to hold the control button. That's the reason you hold control, is so you can select multiple cells. So I'm going to hold control, click this one, but I'm also going to add leftover. So there's that. And then close it, hit enter. So right now I've got, when I get paid on the 17th, because I've got this leftover money, what I actually have in my pocket is $1,080. But I'm going to have expenses to pay, so you're going to see what we have left over. So let's go back down to our expenses. We're not going to pay rent because we already paid it. We're not going to pay our cell phone. We're not going to pay Spotify. But let's just say, for the sake of this, we get a haircut every week. I know that's a lot for a girl, but $70 for personal still. And this formula that's in this cell, I can drag it over. So I'm going to drag this over. And you'll see it already added it up for us. And if you're kind of like, I don't really know if that worked, if you double click this, it shows you what's going on. It's telling you that it's doing the sum of C9, which is right here, C9, and it's adding all of the cells below it up to C13. Okay. So our total expenses, we can drag that formula, because remember this just equals that. So we can drag that over, and we can do it for all of those. Our leftover account balance, remember, is just this minus this. So we can drag this formula all the way over. And that is really it. So the only thing that we have to drag over that we didn't is our account balance. But we couldn't do that from this because we didn't have a leftover over here. So now that we have a leftover, meaning this plus, this plus this plus a leftover, now that formula makes sense and we can just drag that across. And for the sake of this example and not dragging things out for too much longer, I'm just going to copy. I'm going to copy these, and I'm going to drag them out. But what I'm going to do is rent, cell phone, and Spotify, because those are monthly expenses. I'm going to copy them, and I'm going to have that on the 31st as well, because let's just say we pay the rent on the 1st of the month, so that would be the next day. So I'm going to put that here, and I'm also going to put it on the 28th down here. So now I'm just going to highlight this just so you can see it easier. But we take a look at our leftover account balance. We started with $580 left over, but you can see how that's building. So assuming that we don't do silly things like with our personal spending, assuming we don't like blow that out of the water every week, we could be saving in one summer $3,000 by the end of the summer, assuming that we stick to this budget. Okay, so obviously if you go outside and you spend a bunch of stuff, it's not going to work for you. But that's it. Now, the one last thing that I want to show to you really quick, and I'll wrap this up, is how you can use this to your advantage. Okay, and how you can actually like plan forward with this. So remember in the beginning I said you can use this to try and figure out what type of job you would need. Okay, well, this is a full-time job at minimum wage. Let's say you did a part-time job at minimum wage. If you did a part-time job, let's just do the math really quick. I'm using my calculator here. $15 an hour times, let's say 20 hours a week. That's $300. But taxes taken out, let's say it's closer to $200. Okay? Which means that your first paycheck is really only $400. Okay? If I take this 200 and drag it out, look what happens to my leftover account balances. It's good here, it's good here, it's negative 100 there, negative 30, negative 110 here. Okay, so you can see at the beginnings or at the ends of every month when you have to pay rent and stuff, you come up negative. So by doing this, you know, okay, well, I need to work more than 20 hours a week. Okay, so let's say now I'm trying to figure it out. Let's say I'm making $15 an hour and I work 30 hours a week. That's $450. Let's call that $350 after taxes. And I drag that over. 350 times 2 is going to be $700. So that's our first paycheck. And now look at all of my leftover money. Nothing's in the negative. So that's good. But if we had it a full-time job, you saw how much more money I had. I can start to save that money. And I'll show you how to do savings. Actually, I'll show you how to do savings right now, really quick. This is how you do it. I would click right here and select this whole row. If you right-click, you can insert one row below. Okay, that gives me another row. And I can type in savings. And if I want to, I can make this a different color, just like I did in the up there. I'm going to make this the same color. Okay, so these are my savings. So now every time I get a paycheck, let's say I throw in $50. I throw in $50 for every paycheck. So I want this cell to be this linked up here. So this equals that cell. I close it, I hit enter. Now this one, the formula is going to be equals sum is going to be whatever I put in this one, but it's also going to be adding what I already have in savings. So I'm also going to hold control and click this, close it, hit enter, and you can see it's $50, but I didn't add anything. Let's say I put in $50 for every single paycheck. So you can see I've got $100 now in savings, because that's what I saved last week plus what I put in savings this week. And if I drag this formula out, by the end of the summer, I've got $450 in savings. Okay, but we did not adjust our total expenses. So check this out. If I double click this, I did not adjust. It's not adding my savings amount right there. So I've got to adjust this. It only goes to cell C13. So it didn't take out our savings. So I've got to put a 4 there to make it C14. Hit enter. And then I'm going to drag this formula out. Okay. Now this includes our savings everywhere, but we're still positive. Our leftover is still positive, which is good. We've got savings in the bank. We've got all of our expenses taken care of, and we're good. Okay. So again, another example you could do though is maybe you want to pay more per rent because you want a nicer place. You can pop that in, see how it works. If you start to get negative numbers, you know you've got some adjustments to do with your life. But look, I just adjusted it. Everything looks good. So that's about it. It gets more complicated if you'd like it to, and you could format it so that it starts to look like this. And remember, you can get rid of your expenses if I highlight all of this stuff. If I right click and do hide rows, I can even hide row 8. And I could just look at this. And this is even simpler for me to look at. So that is it.